So what I'm looking at here, now that we know a little bit about contractions, is you're going to see several colors here. You're going to see this light red, light blue, dark blue. So the darker color signifies more of the muscles that are contracting, so working in that concentric portion. The lighter muscles will be more of a eccentric lengthening or isometric in some cases. So when we look at the archetypes of what we'll see when someone pushes off their back leg, or subsequently when they're pushing off the front, really means no difference. These are the types more often than not that we'll see. They'll fall within these three. Type 1 is when the foot is flat, so you're there in a more dorsiflex foot position. From that standpoint, we're going to see more of an eccentric, kind of more leaning towards that isometric contraction in the quad. Anterior tibialis are really the muscles getting ready to go to lead towards propulsion. We're going to see very little excitation, very little shortening, contracting of the glutes, the hamstrings, the calf, and then the Achilles right here in blue. We're not going to have much tension in there to create for the stretch shortening cycle. So as opposed to something where there'd be in the stretch shortening cycle a flattening then to a supinating, what we'd see is if this were the case and they loaded into this position, and then ended up in number 2 where they're actively pushing through that foot, then that would be a stretch shortening cycle. So those are really 2 key indicators to distinguish between, okay, are we loading and then unloading the foot, or are we just swinging? So athletes that are more in this first hip archetype, you're going to see them not really push, and then so their solution more often than not is going to be a heavy swing of the stride leg or a lot of attention paid to getting their arms and stride leg to come out and reach or pull them from the rubber. Now, when we get to hip archetype number 2, this is what you used to see a little more traditionally. Now there's a mix. When you first heard of that, sprinter's lean or the letter H with the back hip, this was more successful because of the contractions that were happening within the body. So in this space, we go ahead and we see that there's 3 concentric contractions really happening. You're going to have the glutes, the quad, and the calf. You're going to have a loaded Achilles. The hamstring at this point is in a lengthened position, so there is an eccentric contraction or portion to it. The hamstring's role here would be to keep the knee stable and not move or rotate while the athlete was pushing. If you saw the athlete and their foot is stable, but the knee is from behind view going everywhere, then you'd look at, in my assessments, did I see some weak hamstring issues there? If I did, that's going to also hit. I'm further down that rabbit hole of you've got some weak hamstrings and we need to address that if this is going to be the way you're going to push or if you're going to try to push better. So oftentimes we'll see more of a vertical projection from that. So this will be more of that squat pattern that we talked about. When it's the rear hip, meaning their back foot, they're still going to have an ability to be in a hinge. But if this is what their front foot looks like at the moment that they're pushing, then that is where we're going to see that, oh man, this isn't going to be as successful, or it's going to be harder for the athlete to stay in a hinge as they get into their front foot and drive out completely. Now, the number 3, this is more of what you'll see pretty much every kid that's worked with me consistently. We do this all the time. Front foot, back foot, we're always trying to achieve this position at the time we're pushing off. So what you'll see here is you're going to see 3 more isometric contractions. And what I mean by isometric is that if I were to kind of take this space right here, kind of take this piece out, and I were to move it, rotate it, what we're looking at is that. So if the athlete's in the shape and then they're pitching, this drops down, and then the athlete pushes into that 2 type position. So as they're dropping their weight, both the glute, the hamstring, and the calf are in a shortened position, but they're not lengthening just yet. So to think of it this way is they're holding energy. It's that yielding component of a eccentric contraction where we're getting the advantage of a stretch shortening cycle to be able to explode out. So they're literally working free and then through. So what we'd see there in those terms is, like I said, we're going to see 3 more isometric contractions. The Achilles is going to be loaded in that case, in that space. So that's why the blue is lengthened longer than it is there. And you're going to have an opportunity for more horizontal projection because, as you can see, that's more of a hinge pattern. These are the 3 general types that you're going to go ahead and see. It's important to understand that.